that I am laid out and my toes curled up, I will be fighting for justice. Thank you very much, everyone.
Wow, now that's an incredible story.
Okay, so Terry's given us something to look forward to there. Okay, so we've looked at some of the big disputes and some of the international issues, and very often the trade union movement are by definition reactive. We have to react to the attacks of our bosses and of the government, and that they choose the timing and the ground of much of the disputes and the strikes that take place. Now that's in the nature of things, but we also can on occasions be on the front foot, and locally in West Cheshire TUC we are keen to have that aspect to our campaigning. So Ray McHale from the local TUC is going to speak about our campaign to bring about an acceptable living wage in Chester. Ray.
Thanks very much. As Kenny said, I'm one of the officers of the local Trades Council, and the Trades Council is a geographical body which brings together trade unions to campaign on broader community issues. So things like the health service, the bedroom tax, academisation in schools, issues which go beyond the workplace into the community and where we need to campaign on a wider basis, and that's what we do in the Trades Council. And as Kenny has said, one of the things that's focusing our mind at the moment is the fight for a living wage. The TUC not long ago started a campaign which basically said Britain needs a pay rise, and that's absolutely the case. And the recession we've gone through has seen real cuts in people's take-home pay, their real living standards. In local government where I work, probably the lowest paid in the public sector, the pay cut since 2010 has been around 20%. I didn't think I'd ever live to see a day where people start suffering 20% pay cuts over a period of time. And the need to address the issue of a living wage is one that's, I think, vital at the moment, because paying low-paid people more money is probably the surest way of getting money back into the economy, boosting the economy. The rich take their money offshore or stick it in the bank. If low-paid people get better pay, they spend that money because they desperately need it. You've probably seen that George Osborne announced the introduction of what they called the National Living Wage, which is the new minimum wage. That's £7.20 an hour. Now it's an interesting figure because the Living Wage Foundation living wage is £8.25 an hour, and the Living Wage Foundation admit that even that figure of £8.25 has been held down artificially, really, because of the recession. They haven't wanted to recommend too big a pay increases because of a concern that wouldn't go down too well. And the other thing about the £7.20 an hour is it continues to institutionalise the discrimination against young people. So the £7.20 an hour will only be paid to people over 25. We've already had minimum wages which you didn't get the full minimum wage until you were 23. Now with a new national living wage, it's 25 before you get the full amount, and otherwise you just paid the lower minimum wage. And that institutionalisation of discrimination against young people is something. It doesn't just happen, obviously, in pay and the minimum wage. It also happens in terms of benefits and in terms of housing. If you're wanting to get housing benefit as a young person, they say if you're under 30, you've got to be over 30 to actually be able to get benefit for a flat.
35.
Otherwise, you have to live in a shared house.
35, yes. 35. Yeah. It's even worse. It's even worse.
So, as I say, you know, we live in this low-wage economy. The government harp on about the number of extra people employed, but the reality is that many of those are on low pay, and trying to drive up wages to the living wage, we think is a key campaign to take place locally. Now, what we've seen even since George Osborne announced the £7.20 an hour is a number of companies have reacted differently. There's been some pressure on companies like Aldi and Lidl who have actually paid the new national living wage of £8.25. But we've also seen companies like Wilko, B&Q, Caffè Nero, Eat, and they've basically said paying £7.20 an hour is too expensive, and therefore we're going to try and claw money back. And what we've seen them doing is trying to renegotiate weekend enhancements, shift payments, night work payments, bank holiday payments, in order to reduce those enhancements and cut people's overall take-home pay, you know, to claw back even the fact that they're getting £7.20 an hour. And I think, you know, one of the things that we want to do as part of our campaign is to pick up that issue in the private sector, you know, pick up the companies that are cutting people's terms and conditions to drive down their pay because of this new national living wage, and you know, perhaps organise some demonstrations, petitions, pickets and things like that. The Labour Council that was elected last year is obviously a major step forward for this area, and one of their manifesto commitments was that they wanted to make Cheshire West a living wage borough, and we certainly welcome that commitment. And the first thing they have done is they have introduced the living wage of £8.25 as the minimum rate of pay for staff working for the local council, and that's clearly a good step forward. But unfortunately, over the last few years, the Tories, when they were in power, outsourced most of the low-paid workers who worked for the council. So they were moved into places like Brio Leisure, Vivo Healthcare, Essential, Q West, all these different joint companies were set up, and that's where most of the low-paid staff exist. And we want, as part of our campaign, to press those council companies to pay the living wage of £8.25. It also affects schools, because although people working in community schools are council employees, the council has said to them, well, it's really up to the school to decide if they want to pay the new local living wage, as they call it, of £8.25. And that's something where, you know, we could end up with some schools paying that and others not, and, you know, a real lottery in terms of the pay rates that people get in schools. So we'll be pressing the local council to try and make sure that all the companies that they finance, all the companies that they own, and all the schools that are part of the local authority pay the national living wage, what they call the local living wage of £8.25 an hour. And, you know, that's going to be a big part of our campaign over the next few months. And then the final part in relation to the local authority is particularly about contracts that are let by the council. Many years ago, work like home care and old people's homes used to actually be delivered by the council. Most of that has stopped. Most of that has been outsourced. Under what was called single status in local government, care workers got a very good pay increase. They finally got recognised for the skills and that were involved in caring for people. But soon after that, basically the council decided to cut back on that work, and bit by bit contracts were pushed into the private sector. So now, if you get cared for in your own home, it will be a private company comes to deliver that care. and they obviously don't pay the same rates of pay that the council do. So part of the campaign for the living wage is to say that those contracts, when they're let by the council, must incorporate a clause saying that those companies pay the living wage. And I think, you know, that there are thousands of care workers who would benefit from that approach. But, you know, there are lots of contracts that the council lets where we can influence the living wage and make sure that it's paid. And it's only when the council applies very forcefully that policy across its own companies and for the contracts that it lets, that it will start to impact on the local economy. If care workers working on contracts for the council are paid the living wage, then people trying to compete in the private sector are going to find that they have to pay higher wages in order to compete. So the council can have a big influence, but it has got to be very determined and very forceful in implementing that living wage. And, you know, the situation in the care industry is a really appalling one at the moment in terms of pay rates. I remember one of my daughter's friends started working as an apprentice for a private care company, and she had about 3 days working alongside someone else, and then because she could drive, she was off doing care on her own. And she was getting paid £2.70 an hour as an apprentice to deliver care for people on her own. And you know, that's the sort of disgraceful way that these companies are able to make profits. And you know, the way people are employed is appalling. Quite often they're asked to be available between 7 in the morning and 11 at night, and during that time they might pick up 3 or 4 hours work, and that's all they get paid for. If they are 10 miles from home and there's 2 hours to the next contract, they can't claim the mileage to travel home again, so they either have to sit and wait in their car for 2 hours for the next bit of work, or they have to drive home at their own expense and then drive back out 2 hours later. So these things really have to be tackled in terms of the whole low pay issue. And I think, as I say, as a trades council, we're determined to pick up the issue of the living wage, to make sure it's delivered locally by people who work for the council, people who work in council companies, people who work on council contracts, and then we'll also press it out into the private sector. And we hope that over the next few months people will join us in fighting that campaign, trying to boost our local economy by boosting wages of low-paid people in this area. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ray. Yeah, I think there's a chance. I think perhaps we may see Chester getting the nickname Union City at some point in the near future. We can hope. So, congratulations, comrades. We've managed to bring this through to the conclusion. It looked slightly wetter and less optimistic when we started, but we've managed to bring it off with no fatalities. May Day is a great opportunity for the Labour movement and campaigning groups to draw a balance sheet of the last year's struggle and look forward to the struggles that are ahead of us. We've heard, you know, of the heroic struggles of the junior doctors, which will really be a key feature of the coming months. The struggle on the academies and the campaign on a living and decent wage. These are all things that I think today we've seen groups coming together and realising the benefits of you know, perhaps standing together and fighting together. And certainly as a trade union movement, you know, we've allowed the doctors to fight on their own. We'll probably allow the teachers to fight on their own. You know, there really is a massive logic and a basic logic of trade unionism of standing together. And that's really where we need to try and move things in the coming months and years. We need to have workers being able to stand together and support workers in dispute in other areas that are crucial to them. And I think we also need to bring together the communities in that way, and certainly we can get that community support for teachers and for health workers, and that will, I think, will be in a much healthier position. So Thanks very much. I think we have shown it's been a great show of solidarity from the local trade union movement and campaign groups. We are stronger together, and we'll be back next year. The fight goes on. Thank you very much.
So that brings to the conclusion, I think. We didn't get the earlier speeches. I think it might have been Julia Doctor, because we covered that in an interview on 107 News. But that was incredible material about what will happen when the state wants to make life difficult for you. Stop you going to America. So it's an international conspiracy against you. Because all you've done is stand up for your rights. That's right. That's right. He was, yeah. And in amongst the same company is Ricky Tomlinson, who was in Brookside and the royal family. And if you stand up and make your voice heard in this life, you make the authorities may like it's difficult for you. Then we saw Palestine. We had you do is open the front door, and your uncle goes away for 4.5 years. You can imagine that happening today in Chester. So this is, the sort of story.
Invading our privacy is fine, waiting for a benign government. Yeah. And I think when people say, if you've got nothing to hide, what are you worrying about? Well, the thing is,
their intentions, malign.
Change what they think is bad to hide.
And we've seen it during the New Labour era as well, not just the Tory administration. So it's the same thing, almost the same treatment that he had during that era. So it's almost like it doesn't matter who's in government, he seems to be guessing the same things in that way. The establishment, yeah.
Well, the Tories were shown, weren't they? They've gone against the senior doctors from the Hillsborough thing, and the Hillsborough thing, and I thought, just shows what they're like.
Yeah, right.
We're just having a rant.
Yeah, I can believe what those two stories, what it reveals. I mean, how the life is made difficult for you. It's getting your way as somebody really, and he stood in positions of authority, and he stood up for people, and they stopped him going to America. That's how unjust it is. It's just, I've got a friend there now. I haven't seen that. Is that United We Stand, that one?
It's a really good play. It's funny, it's got music, it's got food,
Shrewsbury Pickets.
comedy.
Well, that's a bit like with the arrests as well. If you get arrested, you also can't. It's difficult to get a visa straight away. So again, you haven't got the right to freely travel the planet. And then they're going to dismantle the benefit system as well, so you can't get that. That's the stuff, there needs to be some sense and logic to it all in the end. That's the thing.
I'm always saying I'm like
I know what you mean. Well, the academising, yeah. Well, that's good to meet you anyway. Yeah. And if that's on anywhere, I'll go and see it. Stop all of that. I think that'll be good to put out on.